Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So the subject of today's video is just a couple of little things that I discovered when I was recording my latest track. And the first thing is the off-axis coloration on a bi-directional microphone. I was using a ribbon microphone, and I was getting a lot of the room sound. So I'll give some examples of that. And this is the first thing that I did, was it's kind of strange, but it's quite a cheap solution, but I used a sock. So I had the ribbon mic way up high in the room. It was probably about 2 or 3 meters away from I was recording guitar and vocals at the same time. And I run into a couple of issues when I was doing that. And if you're recording with one mic, you probably have the same problems also. So it's two little things that can really make a big difference when you've only got one microphone to work with. The advantage of using one microphone is that you don't get there's no phase issues that you might pick up if you was using two microphones close to each other. You can sometimes get phase problems. You can cancel out the bass. So to avoid that, sometimes you can just use one microphone, and that's what I was using for my latest recording. So I was using a ribbon microphone, and as you can see, with it being high in the room, it was subject to a lot of the reflected sound from the ceiling, which I didn't want for this. Sometimes you might want that if it sounds good, but other times if your room sound is not so great, sometimes you might just not want that. I wanted a more natural sound. I wanted to sound how it sounded to me at the time, and for whatever reason, the microphone hears more reflected sounds of the room, and it just sounds less natural if you have that reflected sound. So this is what I did to limit that amount of sound reflection, and to just make the sound more warm and closer. So like I say, the microphone was placed quite far away. It wasn't close mic'd at all. I wasn't using two close mics. I was using a room mic. And I like to think that on the recording, it sounds as though it has been close mic'd. It sounds as if the vocals is very close to the microphone, surprisingly. And I think a lot of that just comes from the absorption of sound from the material around the mic, the back of the mic. So if you don't know what off-axis color is on a microphone, so if you've never used a ribbon microphone, then I'll just quickly explain. Basically, every microphone has its own polar pattern, and the polar pattern of a ribbon microphone is that of a bi-directional polar pattern. Whichever direction the microphone is pointing, it picks up that sound, but it also picks up all the sound from behind it too, which is sometimes very useful, but on this occasion it wasn't necessary. I didn't need it. So I used cotton damping material to block out the sound from the other side, and I just feel like it really warmed the sound up. Also, it was just an added bonus, and I'll show you the difference. So here's the difference between the two, so you can see exactly what it's doing and the effect it is creating. Okay, so this first one, it sounds just a little bit more tinny, I think, and then when it gets to the next one, yeah, I don't know, it just seems a little bit fuller to me. I think it sounds a little bit fuller. You'll have to forgive the mixer's just a little bit rushed, just to show the point, really. And the other issue that I had when I was recording with one microphone, not so much in this room, because my latest recording was recorded in this room, but just a few days ago I was recording downstairs in my kitchen, which is a bigger room. There's more hard surfaces. The floor, mainly the floor, is a harder surface, and what I found was at the time it sounded balanced. I sounded like my voice sounded balanced with the guitar, and it all sounded fine. But when I listened back to the recordings, I felt like the bottom end, the low end of the vocals was really much much louder than everything else. So it didn't sound the same as how it did in the room. And this brings me to my second point. So my second point is using multiband compression. If you're using one microphone and you want to control and shape the sound so that it sounds more natural and true to how it does in the room, then to use multiband compression. And if you don't have a multiband compressor, if you have any access to a low pass and a high pass filter, EQ, if you can high pass and low pass with EQ and split off the tracks. So if you've got, like, I'm just using Fruity Loops, it's a DAW, a DAW that I use at the minute. So what I want to experiment with is, so first of all, just copy the track. So take the recorded track and make an exact copy into the second channel. So you've got two tracks exactly the same. And then on the first track, low pass it. So take the EQ and just let all the bottom end come through on track one. And then on the second track, high pass it. So let all the high end, so you roll off and then just take off all of the bass, and at the same point, so that one track is all the high end and one track is all the low end, and then you can control that low end and then compress it. Use a compressor on the low end, and you could use quite a harsh compressor on the low end, and then on the high you can let all those transients and natural sounds come through, so that it's not ducking the entire sound down when the compression of the bass is reduced in volume. So that means that you've just got a much more natural sound. It's like it's like a parallel compression, where parallel compression is where you have some of the dry sound coming through so that it still sounds natural. So yeah, that's the other tip here. So I'll show you the difference in the sound and how that can improve the sound to make it sound more natural. Okay, so this is the two ways that you can go about it. It might be a little bit tricky for you to see on the screen. I apologise for that. I can't really get my Elgato out at the minute. But the first way is, the simple way, is just to use, if your vocals are a little bit boomy, the first and simple way is to just go and use the multiband compressor. But if you don't have that, and then just compress the low end only. But if you don't have that, or for some reason you don't want to do it that way, there's an interesting way that I thought of. You could go here, sidechain to another track, and then okay, so it's a little bit boomy at the bottom. So now put an effect on this one, so it's going to be a filter, and I'm going to high pass it. So type high pass, and make it really steep. And then I'm going to pull it right up to, I think all that boominess is probably all below 380 hertz. That's where a lot of the boominess is. So now I've got that here. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this track. I'm going to use compressor, compress it. So that boominess will start to be reduced by the compression, and then I can lower the volume, and the high end will now be coming through this track, so I can control the high end. See, control the highness just using the volume on the side-chained track. Okay, it's a little bit tricky, but this might be a little bit clearer. So you see here, I've done a low shelf, and so you play it now, and just choose. Starts to come in about there is a good place, and then so this is a side chain track here, and on that I've put on a very strong parallel compression. So the original track is completely dry. The second track has got this compressor on it, so you can go quite extreme with the compression, and the sound is still quite subtle, because you're just drawing the volume. So that low end is heavily compressed, and then just bring it in until you've got as much as you want there, and it's heavily compressed so that it doesn't affect, like, say, the guitars and things like that that's playing at the same time. So that, yeah, that's one way of getting around that. If you're only using one microphone and something's, usually the vocals, is very bassy, yeah, that's one little way of getting around that and controlling it. Basically, I just want my recordings to sound as if you're in the actual room. It's not so much trying to make a good recording, but it's just trying to capture the sound that I hear when I'm in the room, and that's what I like to do. That's what, if I can do that, then if I can make it sound natural, I can make it sound like the instruments are actually there in the room with you. That's what I'm trying to. Everybody's got their own what they want to accomplish from mastering and mixing and recording and tracking. But for me, that's something that I really like to. I enjoy the challenge of, because recording is not easy. To make it sound how you want it to do, to make it even sound how it was when you recorded it, it's not easy. But I like that. It's come to be something that I enjoy, the challenge. I almost like to limit myself to one microphone, just so that it's just for the challenge of the mix and the mastering, to really capture the sound only, using limited microphones. It makes it more interesting when it gets to the mixing phase, which is kind of a really fun part to me. Home recording, that's something that I really enjoy, and making it sound like it did in the room. That challenge is that's where I get my enjoyment from my profession. Not profession. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, so there's my 2 tips on how to make a single microphone sound a little bit more natural than it would without any of these processes.